growing summertime feud leads a once friendly neighborhood to war. Deadly war. With a vet who thinks he's still on the battlefield.
This is not murder. This is killing the enemy.
He came right up to us and said, "Are you ready to die?"
It could be any town, USA, your town. Kids playing on swings, tight-knit neighbors, then a midnight murder spree. A killer in camouflage crawling across his front yard.
I immediately went into what the military calls a crouching stance.
Billy Woodward engaging the enemy, his former friends. But why?
Just pow, 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 pow. I figured he was going to come and kill all of us.
You had been such good neighbors. How in the world did it go so badly?
A gun, and he says the law on his side.
Billy Woodward says that you all threatened him.
Surveillance video shows a neighborhood shootout.
Was he standing his ground with 31 rounds, defending himself? Or taking revenge against neighbors who taunted him?
We never had guns. We never had baseball bats. We never had knives. The words that are coming out of my mouth, they're not going to kill somebody.
Try telling that to a man who's reached his breaking point.
These people with me.
Tonight, you'll see how a small Florida suburb erupted into bloodshed.
Your neighbor had just gunned down your boyfriend in front of your eyes.
Those explosive surveillance images. Interrogation tapes. A blow-the-roof-off hearing.
War has been declared upon my house and family. Do you not understand that, sir?
And the question everyone will be asking, is this woman's husband a calculating killer or a hero?
He saved my life and our children. How can you punish him for that?
After tonight, which side will you be on?
When we return. Now back to 2020's The War Next Door.
Good evening. Right here tonight, you're about to see how those few minutes of gunfire, 31 rounds caught on surveillance video, will change a neighborhood forever. Friends, the kind you'd hang out with, turning on each other to set off the war next door. But why?
That's the big question, and it's part of the debate raging across this country, Elizabeth, that controversial Stand Your Ground law in 29 states. And the question, is it ever justifiable or just a blanket excuse to kill when in the wrong hands? So before tonight's show is over, you might be asking yourself, who's the bully here and who's the real victim? Once again, here's Deborah Roberts.
Titusville, Florida, tucked in along the East Coast, just up from the Kennedy Space Center.
2, 1, liftoff.
It's the Space Coast, NASA country, where big rockets shoot for the stars. But among 3 homes on Smith Drive, a more earthly matter put this city in the headlines, a vicious neighborhood feud. The trouble begins here at Billy and Barbara Woodward's house. Parents of 2 kids, she works in HR, he's at home on disability. A Gulf War vet, he says he suffers from PTSD and anxiety, treated with a shoebox full of prescriptions. Across the street, Billy's good friend, Gary Hembry, lives with his girlfriend, Kim Salisbury, and their children.
What was the relationship like between you two and the Woodwards? I get the impression that there was a good relationship.
Gary knew them for years and years. Our kids would go on hay rides with him. It seemed fine.
They were so close, Woodward even loaned Gary money. Gary's house was bursting at the seams. An old friend, Roger Pichor, and his girlfriend had moved in with her children. The crowd from Gary's home often spilled next door into the yard of welder Tim Blake and his wife, Carrie.
I thought it was a nice place. I mean, all the neighbors seemed really nice. You know, it was very quiet, quaint. Kids were playing all the time.
A tight group of neighbors all getting along. Billy's wife, Barbara, still recalls the happy days on Smith Drive when all the children played together.
Is that the swing set that you put up?
I saved for years to buy that swing set. All the kids would come over and play on it. My daughter loved it.
They even bond over chickens. Billy decides to raise some in his yard. Not exactly legal, but no one seems to mind. He considers them therapy animals.
They were like pets. You could pick them up and handle them. They were very friendly.
How many would you guess you had?
I don't know, about 20 or so.
Oh.
Life was mostly fine until an incident with a birthday present. Billy and Barbara's daughter Ava was turning 12.
Somebody left a present for Ava. They thought we were not home. Well, I guess we didn't hear the door or whatever, so they left it on the porch.
But Ava's birthday gift went missing. The Woodwards accused the daughter of their neighbor Gary with stealing it.
I just knew that she had taken it. Gary immediately got very agitated and upset that we were accusing his daughter of having stolen something from our house.
Billy and Barbara called the police. Gary's daughter's in tears. It was a bad scene. The families in those 3 houses along Smith Drive now at battle stations. It's Billy and Barbara Woodward versus everybody else. Gary and Kim, Roger, and the Blakes next door. Photos from that day show Billy, the man who loved those chickens, flipping the bird. And although he denies it, the neighbors say Billy also brandished a weapon.
Billy lifted his shirt up and showed us his gun.
Billy flashed a gun and hold it up. Said to the patrol, said, anybody come out there. Come on out here in the street. We'll get it done right now.
When Billy's dad comes over, he says the neighbors turn on him too.
Some of the comments were, I got me a baseball bat. I'll bash that old man's head in.
Did you fear that this could turn violent?
Oh, yes, ma'am, absolutely. Yep.
Things get so heated, Billy's father buys him a surveillance camera that will later record terrifying events. All this heartburn instigated by something as minor as a missing birthday present. Sad, but hardly a surprise to anyone familiar with the long-running carnival of wacky neighbors stories 2020 has followed over the years.
Mind my own business when you came out here. There's somebody on a tractor on Pioneer. Oh my gosh!
He's flashing my house.
I'm getting out of here.
Caterpillar crimes and misdemeanors.
You better get some cops up here with the guns, because this son of a gun is crazy.
The antics often lead to offense, surveillance cameras, and regular visits from the police. But not many end in the kind of heartbreak witnessed in this story. Back in Titusville, the neighbors across the street from Billy Woodward know exactly how to ruffle his feathers. Those precious, illegal chickens. They blow the whistle, and Billy's forced to give up his feathered friends. He and wife Barbara find them new homes in the country.
How upsetting was it to Bill to have to get rid of them?
It made him angry. He was just upset that there had not been a problem, and then now all of a sudden there is.
When they made him get rid of the chickens, oh, it was on then. The light switch went on in Billy. He was not ever the same then.
They were constantly taunting about the chickens. They would drive up and down the street and lay on the horn just to be irritating. So it was a constant barrage of noise, which they knew would bother him because of his PTSD.
So it was a hostile environment.
It was constant. It was constant.
Even neighbor Tim Blake admits the taunting sometimes went too far.
Did you ever think at some point that this is going to escalate? This is going to get bad?
We even told the cops, are you going to wait till the body bags are being toted out?
But you also knew that you were antagonizing him as much as he was antagonizing you.
Oh, it was a 50-50 deal. Yeah, I look back now, I act like you were an idiot.
Police were soon barraged with calls from the neighborhood, often several times a day.
What would happen once the police arrived?
They would say, everybody needs to go home and calm down, and that never happened. As soon as the police would leave, they would start their taunts again.
Billy's dad, himself a former cop, gives his son some astonishing advice, saying he can't rely on police.
Explain to him that at the same time that you have to try to involve the police to keep you safe and your family safe, son, you always have to remember that there might be a time when they're not there.
You said that to him?
Yes, I did, because I've had to say it to many, many people over the years.
By late August, the nasty dispute ends up at the Titusville courthouse, with all sides asking for orders of protection. After speaking out of turn in court, Billy gives his standard excuse.
Judge, I apologize for my outburst. I am a mentally disabled veteran who's medicated, who suffered head injury and combat stress, and I don't control my actions very well.
The judge denies the orders. telling them all to go home and behave. But the hot-headed neighbors can't even get out of the parking lot without a physical brawl. Billy jumps Gary.
He came right up to us and said, "Are you ready to die?" Picked Gary up by his neck, threw him up against the car.
Gary's cell phone rolling on the whole thing.
What's wrong with you? You psychopath!
I'm okay.
The recording ends when a deputy picks up Gary's phone. Billy is arrested and released. 5 days later, there he is on the surveillance camera with his gun, all that ammo, and his neighbors in his sights. Stay with us.
Now back to 2020's The War Next Door with Deborah Roberts.
The sun has set on a fateful Labor Day weekend in Titusville, Florida, the traditional end of a long, hot summer, the first Monday of September, and the last straw in a neighborhood feud, pitting Billy and Barbara Woodward against the folks across the street on Smith Drive. Gary Hembry and his girlfriend Kim Salisbury, their house guest Roger Pichor, and next door Tim and Carrie Blake. Enter the gunman, Billy Woodward, crawling on all fours into the frame of his own surveillance camera.
I kept on crawling. I was on a military mission. I was going to end this war.
It's just past midnight. He's slipping out of his home where his wife and 2 children are asleep to spy on his neighbors and the remains of a rowdy barbecue across the street.
When you hunt down an enemy, patience is a virtue. If you have no patience, you're not going to make a good soldier.
The next time we see him on that surveillance camera, Billy's across the street, approaching Roger and his son who'd been wrestling on the lawn.
Roger's son jumped off his back when he saw me, and I shot Roger in the torso. You'll have to listen to the video to count the amount of times. Right now I couldn't tell you. He slumped to the ground.
What's striking is how calm he is, how methodical and emotionless.
Billy now turns his gun on Tim Blake, standing in his carport.
I followed him to his garage. He tried to go inside the door. I put rounds into his torso until he slumped to the ground.
He shoots me about, I don't know, 5 or 6 times.
Did he say anything?
Nothing. He was smiling.
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 As these crime scene photos show, investigators later find spent bullets and brass shell casings littering the driveway, lead-punched holes in a toolbox and the doorway.
There was 2 bullets in the door frame. I had to call CSI out the next day to come pull them out.
But most of Billy's shots find their target. 11 bullets hit Tim Blake.
I got still a bullet in my backbone, 1 in my leg.
And what's racing through your mind at this point?
I was go ahead and say my prayers. Stuff was flying around my face. I just kept getting shot everywhere. And then I was like, damn, I'm already dead. I just ain't had time to die yet.
I opened the door and saw you laying in a pool of blood, didn't know if you were dead or alive, and closed it and called 911.
Carrie, did you think you were going to be killed?
I did. I truly did. I thought he was going to come in the house and shoot all of us.
Then a deathly silence. But Billy isn't retreating, he's reloading. A fresh clip with 15 more rounds. And now Billy's ex-friend, Gary Hembry, father of the little girl in the birthday present spat, follows his girlfriend Kim out their front door, straight into the line of fire.
Gary Hembry come out of his garage and said, "What the hell's going on out here?" And I had a clean shot at his chest, and I put one dead center of his chest. He slumped to the ground.
These official police sketches obtained from court records by 2020 show the position of Gary Hembry's body just a few feet from his front door. Trapped under her bullet-riddled car next to her wounded boyfriend, Kim sees Woodward closing in.
He came back and I watched his feet walk up very slowly, and he emptied the rest of the clip out at my boyfriend.
At some point, Billy returns to his first victim, Roger, with Roger's son watching in horror.
And my dad was just laying there like this. And he pushes him over because he was laying on his stomach and flipped him over and like pushed his head, and his head just went like that and put it right to his head, point blank, just.
And shot him again?
2 right to the head.
And in order to make sure there are no survivors on the battlefield, I point blank shot him in the head once or twice.
So I ran. And I'm still running.
Tim Blake is alive today for one reason.
Because I was out of bullets.
Okay, so you ran out.
I used 31 rounds, 2 15-round clips and 1 in the chamber.
And you ran dry?
Ran dry.
Okay.
On 3 people.
Ran dry as if he'd been watering the lawn instead of mowing down his neighbors. Billy walks back to his home as another neighbor calls out, "You all right?" Billy's answer, like ice. "I got 'em all," he says. Minutes later, that camera's still recording as Smith Drive lights up with first responders.
Tonight, a Titusville man shot 11 times by his neighbor.
Billy's wife, Barbara, says she slept through the whole thing, and when she wakes up, she believes her husband is a victim.
You thought your husband had
I
been
thought
killed.
my husband was dead.
Did you know that he was capable of that kind of violence?
The man that I know and I believe in would not just go shoot some people because he was angry. Something had to happen.
Days later, Tim Blake comes to in a hospital. Detectives arrive to break the bad news about his 2 other neighbors.
I can tell you that Gary and Roger didn't make it. They didn't make it, okay? You're the only one that lived.
After the shooting in a police interview room, Billy Woodward waves away his Miranda rights and starts talking. He seems to lose his head for a moment.
And these people with me and with me and with me and with me and with me.
Listen to me.
This detective is probably thinking, we got him. He's confessing in detail what he did, how he did it, in what order he did it. But as it turns out, this becomes the seeds of what is the defense.
Now the war's over.
Is it?
I promise you, those people will not harass my family or me again.
And do you feel like you should go to jail for this?
No. Because I have pleaded, I have begged, and I have asked for help. No, I don't deserve to go to jail for this. Those sorry deserve to go to jail for what they did to me and my family for the last month, making us live like prisoners in our own home.
Well, yeah.
I'm a soldier. I fought the war, I fought to win, and I won.
When we come back, Billy Woodward now looking more like a salesman than a soldier. But he's still fighting to find a way out of jail. And how about that look on his face in that mugshot? What does he know that we don't? Is there something on that surveillance tape that could set him free?
War had been declared upon my house and family. Do you not understand that, sir?
Stay with us.
2020's The War Next Door continues. Once again, Deborah Roberts.
The feuding neighbors on Smith Drive in Titusville, Florida complained they couldn't get anyone's attention.
Surveillance video shows
Well, they got it now.
to a neighborhood shootout.
Crawling around on
You shoot up the neighborhood and people notice.
Police say after he fired on all 3 victims, he went back to 2 of them, looked down at them, and shot them again in the head.
And before the crime tape comes down, people are arguing about whether Billy Woodward did the right thing.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
You should be ashamed
And you
of
should
yourself.
be. You ever curse a person yourself? Do you
Not
deserve
like
to get
that.
shot
Yeah, you did.
execution
You did it
style?
right over there earlier.
Do you deserve to get shot?
2 years after the killings, the argument moves from the street to a more formal setting, the courthouse in Viera, Florida. And look at Billy Woodward now, in a suit and tie, a far cry from the distraught man with his head in his hands in that police interrogation room, charged with murder and attempted murder. But in an audacious legal maneuver, Woodward and his defense team turned the tables on the state's attorney, claiming Woodward is immune from prosecution under Florida's Stand Your Ground law.
How does Stand Your Ground work exactly?
In a stand your ground state, I don't have to retreat. I can stand my ground, I can stay right there and respond to your deadly force with my own deadly force.
Attorney Mark O'Mara is not on this case, but famously got George Zimmerman acquitted in the Trayvon Martin killing.
Is Stand Your Ground just sort of a blanket defense that's being used and getting people off left and right?
It's really not. No, stand your ground has gotten sort of a very bad connotation since the Zimmerman case, but it's not used very often.
Okay, look, I'm going to have to defend myself.
Maybe not, but when it is used, it can cause quite a stir. One of the most stunning Stand Your Ground defenses happened in Texas.
A shot in the dark by a neighbor who claimed his life was in danger too.
The case of Raul Rodriguez, like Woodward, a killing caught on camera.
Won't y'all turn that down, please?
He went to his neighbor's house to complain about loud karaoke music at a little girl's birthday party.
Don't come any closer, please. I'm telling you, stop. I said stop right now or I will shoot you. Stop! Get back! And I was, no, stop. I'm in fear for my life. Get away from me. Get away from me.
Saying he was attacked, Rodriguez shot and killed the birthday girl's father. He went to prison for murder, but his conviction was recently overturned, and he's been set free pending a new trial. Back in Florida, Billy Woodward, half smiling for his mugshot, is hoping to spring himself from jail too. In this courtroom, a special Stand Your Ground immunity hearing. No jury, just a judge. Billy and his attorneys must prove that in the same circumstances, a reasonable person like you or me would have done what he did.
We have to prove that his fear was reasonable by a preponderance of the evidence. That is the law.
Prosecutor Gary Beatty.
So what he's now asking this court to do is to say, I may have been mistaken about what I believed was about to happen. And yes, based on that mistake, I killed 2 people, but you know what? Never mind, I shouldn't be held accountable for that.
But Woodward's defense team arguing, since Stand Your Ground takes away the duty to retreat, it means you can attack.
And you are allowed to continue that use of deadly force until the threat is totally eradicated. And that is what Mr. Woodward did.
In a way, it's like the 2 dead men, Gary Hembry and Roger Pichor, along with the sole shooting survivor Tim Blake and wife Carrie, are on trial. That's Carrie on the stand.
I understand that if you make threats that people might take you seriously.
At this point, nobody was taken seriously.
It was all just a big joke to you all?
The defense plays the surveillance video from episodes in the weeks before the shootings, highlighting vile taunts and threats aimed at Billy Woodward and his family, even against his 12-year-old daughter.
Kim had initially said that she was going to have Ava, Billy's daughter, raped. And I made a comment as well, something about, yeah, and we're going to pay him to do it or something, because I was in the heat of the moment, hot-headed.
You've got daughters.
I do. I do.
You can't take it lightly for somebody to say they're going to have your daughter raped.
No. But he had also come outside numerous times and told everyone he was going to kill them. He was going to come in our houses when we were sleeping and take all of us out, including our dogs.
Billy said this to you all?
Billy said this to us, yes.
Gary Hembry's girlfriend, Kim Sillsbury, is named as one of the ringleaders in harassing the Woodwards, but she denies some of the allegations.
Did you threaten to burn down his house?
No.
Did you threaten to do anything to them?
Not that I remember, no.
Did you ever threaten to get somebody to rape his daughter?
That's ridiculous. I have children. I had never gone out of my way to be violent to that man, and anything that I did say or could have said or may have said that I remember or don't remember, I never would have hurt anybody's child, ever.
Billy Woodward says that you all threatened him.
The words that are coming out of my mouth, they're not going to kill somebody.
What do you say to someone who might say that you all sort of provoked some kind of violence here.
Nobody has the right to take someone else's life. Nobody has that right.
Mark O'Mara says the immunity hearing could backfire.
Was this a big gamble for his defense team?
In my opinion, it is. You have to put your client on the stand, and that's always a risk.
Tomorrow, we expect to hear from the defendant, who was accused of killing his neighbors.
Still ahead, Billy Woodward takes the stand, delivering powerful testimony.
If I'm inside my house, I'm trapped like a rat.
And stunning claims that he believed the neighbors were armed with more than sharp tongues that night. A baseball bat, gunshots, and a firebomb. Are those neighbors really innocent victims? Stay with us.
2020 continues with the war next door. Here again, Deborah Roberts.
They patched up the bullet holes and swept away the lead. But now the state of Florida wants someone to pay for the shooting of 3 neighbors. And it's turning out to be trickier than expected. You might think Billy Woodward, the man who shot his neighbors, would be a pariah, an outcast. But his wife Barbara says it's quite the opposite.
Families of the victim see your husband as a villain. How do you see your husband?
He's not a villain. He saved my life, and so some people would call that heroic.
A hero? In the Woodward's old neighborhood on Smith Drive in Titusville, Florida, plenty of people seem to agree. There are literal signs of support.
Hi, I'm Deborah Roberts from ABC News. How are you?
Larry and Marty Malden live just down the street.
Why do you have that sign in your yard?
I support Billy. In my opinion, I'd like to see him walk.
You'd like to see him be released from jail?
Right.
Some people would say, okay, neighbors have disputes, but you can't go out and shoot each other.
If he'd threatened my family and my house like he did theirs, he wouldn't have lasted this long. I would have killed him before this.
You're sorry anytime someone dies, but these people just made this neighborhood just a holy hell.
They all ganged up on Billy and his wife and his family.
Scott and Lydia Crow, who lived behind Billy and Barbara Woodward, had a front row seat to the feud. They're taking Woodward's side.
Was it kind of bullying?
Yes.
Like
It was adult bullying is exactly what it was.
And any time he would call the police department, it was 6 people's word against his.
They say they were even drawn into the conflict when Carrie Blake threatened them and other neighbors.
And Carrie took her finger and pointed at our house and pointed at Billy's house, like, we're going to get you, and we're going to get you, and we're going to get you.
Okay. Sir, come on up here and take the witness stand.
Back at the courthouse, Woodward's defending himself during a stand your ground hearing.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
If they can pull off this legal maneuver, he can avoid a trial and be set free.
They were becoming more hostile, and the threats were becoming more real.
His lawyers try to prove that during weeks of taunts and threats, Woodward showed restraint.
There were periods of time when you were actually angry and enraged, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you get a gun, walk across the street, and shoot somebody?
No, sir.
Right after the shootings, Billy Woodward never mentioned weapons or an imminent threat. But now, with everything on the line, his story of what happened the night of the shooting has critical new details. His lawyers producing this Facebook photo of neighbor Roger Pichor, one of the men Billy killed, holding a rifle. They cue up that surveillance video. At about 10:22, you hear sounds of that rowdy barbecue across the street. At 10:41, here are the neighbors taunting and cursing at Billy. At 10:54, Billy says he hears shots.
And I distinctly heard from my house, with my window cracked, 4 cracks of a .22 automatic firearm. Unmistakable cracks of a .22 automatic rifle or pistol. And I heard bang, bang, bang!
Listen again. Sound like gunfire to you or just firecrackers?
That is a .22 automatic.
At 11:05, Billy says the neighbors are talking about a gun.
The girl said they've got a gun. Oh my God. To that effect, they've got a gun.
So at that point in time, what's going through your head?
Death for me and my family. And now they're serious.
Why didn't you call 911?
They don't come. The last time I called the cops, it took them 10 minutes to get there. Left me hanging down the road with my dog. Out and exposed. With nothing to protect me.
Then at 12:02, just after midnight, Billy says he sees his neighbors set something on fire. And that's when he gets his gun.
Now, what about that caused you to arm yourself?
Because I didn't know if that was a Molotov cocktail fixing to come through and into my house.
This is the key to the defense. He says he hears gunshots. He thinks he sees a Molotov cocktail being created. He's now in imminent fear for himself and the safety of his family. That's the makings of a classic stand-your-ground defense.
If I'm inside my house, I'm trapped like a rat.
Outside now with his gun and extra ammo, the former soldier says he hears the men planning to come get him.
It's a gathering of the forces. It caused me to snap into action and do what I did.
Is that where you were at that point in time, where you're in war?
You doggone right I was. War had been declared upon my house and family and myself. Now I'm the only living link between my wife and children in imminent death. Do you not understand that, sir?
So you're convinced, Barbara, that it was your life or their life?
Yes. I believe him. I believe in him, and I believe what he saw and heard that night gave him no other choice.
The survivors deny there was any real threat to Billy Woodward that night.
Nobody planned nothing to go get Billy. We're going to go get him, no.
As for Roger's gun, nothing more than a toy, says Kim Sillsbury, who lived in the same house. In fact, police say none of the victims were armed, something Woodward acknowledges in his first recorded interview with police at the scene.
Was he armed? He was unarmed, sir. He was unarmed? Okay, what about the other two people that were shot? They were unarmed, sir.
But at the hearing, Woodward now says he thought the neighbors did have weapons. He says Roger had an aluminum baseball bat in his hands.
And you're going to hear that baseball bat fall to the ground as I shoot him.
His lawyers play surveillance video. Listen to the sound just after the second gunshot. They say that's the sound of an aluminum bat hitting the pavement. But police did not find a bat at the scene.
The scene was cleaned up. The gun was gone, the bat was gone, the pipe was gone. The scene was cleaned up, and that's why everybody thinks they were unarmed. They were not unarmed.
Woodward says he thought Gary Hembry was pointing a gun at him, that only after the killing did he realize what he really had in his hand.
Did you learn at that point what was in his hand?
After the fact, a coffee mug, sir.
A coffee mug. Then, under cross-examination,
This was a military operation as far as you are concerned, correct?
the strangest moment, the talkative Woodward suddenly at a loss for words.
Mr. Woodward? Mr. Woodward?
One moment, please.
When he does respond, it doesn't get much better.
You told the officer that you were back on the battlefield?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was training.
How much time did you personally spend in infantry combat on the battlefield?
Infantry combat?
Yes, sir.
Zero.
Zero?
Full guard duty, sir.
After a week of testimony, Judge James Earp must now decide whether Woodward goes to trial or goes free.
In a case like this, an analysis seems to suggest that this immunity hearing was not going to be granted because there was no good argument that the threat was imminent that he was responding to.
Just hours later, Judge Earp is back on the bench, ready to rule.
If you'd like to get up and leave after you know what the ruling is, you're welcome to do that, of course.
When we come back, the ruling that will decide whether Billy Woodward was standing his ground on his neighbor's lawn. Stay with us.
2020 continues with The War Next Door. Once again, Deborah Roberts.
The only relevant concept to me.
Judge James Earp returns to the bench in the Viera, Florida courthouse, ready to rule on whether Billy Woodward was some kind of neighborhood hero standing his ground, saving his family, or whether he's just another accused killer with a grudge and a gun. Turns out Woodward's about to have another very bad day.
This is an order denying his claim of immunity pursuant to Florida Statute 776.032.
A judge rejected a Titusville veteran's claim that he shot his neighbors in self-defense.
He called William Woodward the aggressor in this case.
The judge is essentially saying that he doesn't buy the defense, that it was reasonable to believe that there was an imminent threat to him or his family. And in fact, the judge is saying he thinks it was a preemptive strike.
This defendant did not exercise self-defense. This defendant did not stand his ground.
And that means William Woodward now faces trial for murder and attempted murder.
Woodward's lawyer, Robert Berry, hopes a jury will be more sympathetic.
If we end up in trial, we're going to put on the same exact defense.
Do you have a guess about the chances for acquittal for Billy Woodward in this case?
If I were to guess, the facts are too much against him. The way he did what he did was too rational. It was too planned out.
Some neighbors have feuds. Some neighbors build fences. But your husband shot his dead. Could your husband have done something different?
He could have waited for them to come across the street and shoot him, and then we would all be dead.
This is a difficult question, but did these men deserve to die?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Do you think that he deserves to be punished?
How can you punish someone for saving the lives of their family?
Billy Woodward is back in the county jail.
Not for long.
You're convinced that he's going to prevail?
I'm convinced he's coming home. Absolutely.
That man needs to be behind bars. There's something wrong with him.
He could face the death penalty.
I'm okay with that.
He's facing possibly the death penalty.
Uh-huh.
Should he be put to
Good.
death?
Yes, I think he should. I think he should die.
But Ginny Huppert, the mom of Gary Hembry, shot with a coffee cup in his hand, doesn't want anyone else to die.
No, not to death, no. I don't want his mother to go through this. I don't want his kids to ever go through this. It's not going to bring Gary back.
Nearly 3 years since that nightmare on Smith Street, one final heartbreaking twist. If Billy Woodward had held his fire just a few more days, his neighborhood feud would have ended on its own. Gary Hembry was planning to move, and the Woodwards were just days away from packing up too, ready to close on a new house. Woodward even mentions it to detectives.
Had you ever thought about killing them before tonight?
No, you know why? Because we just signed on a brand new house. We're going to a new neighborhood.
It was like if this had just lasted another 30 days, everybody would have gone their way and they'd all live peacefully, the rest of their lives. But it didn't happen that way.
You would have been out of this neighborhood.
In days. And that's all we wanted, was to go somewhere where we could live in peace and quiet.
How is life now? You moved, you're no longer in that neighborhood.
We're doing okay. We love our new neighbors. We love our neighborhood. Kids have lots of friends to play with.
No arguments with your neighbors?
No.
0.0.
My son still misses this house because it's all he knew. And this is the house where Daddy lived with us.
I see a sign here that says, "We support Billy Woodward." So some of your neighbors, or former neighbors, are still standing behind you.
Yes.
Despite the judge's ruling, Billy Woodward is still innocent until proven guilty. A jury will have to decide whether he committed murder or something else. But there's no question that he did terrible harm to many families, including his own.
How are your children understanding, or do they understand what went on?
My daughter does. She understands. My son just wants Daddy to come home. All he knew was He woke up and Dad was gone, and he doesn't understand why these people would keep his daddy from him.
Billy Woodward faces another hearing next week, and his murder trial may come up late this year.
So now you wait
Now we wait.
and see what a jury will decide.
And that's our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm David Muir.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas. For all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, have a great night and a great weekend.